be hip for me.
I know, he could help you be hip.
Yeah, the only thing hip about me is the pain in my left one right now, which is, anyway. Thanks so much. We're going to put that link on IndyStyle.tv. Joining me right now, Michelle Jackson from Hardin Jackson Family Law. I'll be honest, I didn't know there was a National Adoption Day, and people might be thinking, that sounds kind of quirky, but it affects millions of people, right?
Of course, there are millions of families that have adopted or are considering adoption in our nation. And of course, here in Indiana, we have a long tradition of adoption. We have a lot of adoptive families that connect and want to continue to connect. And so National Adoption Month and National Adoption Day are a great time to do that.
Are there things actually going to take place on National Adoption Day?
Yeah, National Adoption Day is November the 17th, which is a Saturday.
Okay.
And so there'll be a lot of different events throughout the U.S. and here in Indiana. Indiana is going to celebrate National Adoption Month on November the 8th.
Okay.
And that's going to be here in Marion County at the City County Building, and from about 10 to 4 there'll be events throughout the day, vendors, and if you're an adoptive family or considering adoption, it might be a good opportunity for you to come and learn more about opportunities or celebrate your adoption. Well,
and for people who aren't familiar with the process, it is a process. I have friends and coworkers who have adopted, and they said, the 9 months of being pregnant would have been a breeze compared to, because there are hiccups, there are laws. Are there state-specific laws, or is adoption covered on a federal law?
Yeah, definitely. If you're doing a domestic adoption, you're going to follow your state's laws. If you're doing an international adoption, you're going to follow your state, your federal, and the foreign law.
Okay.
And so international adoption, I'm sure you've had friends or family that have done that, and you hear all the complications and how long it took and that kind of thing. Definitely doable. I always say people can do it. It's just you have to follow those different laws. And then if you do domestic adoption, there's lots of different options there too. You can do anything from foster adoption to infant domestic adoption or step-parent adoption, grandparent adoption. There's a lot of different options, and so whatever fits your family is best for you.
A lot of adoption options. So I'm sure there are some basic laws that are maybe very similar state to state. All states are different, though. Anything quirky in Indiana that people might not realize, or is it pretty straightforward? They got the process sort of down pat.
Yeah, well, when anybody is considering domestic adoption, they definitely need to know those Indiana laws. And there's some things that are always specific to your state.
Sure.
A birth mother can get some living expenses. Well, in Indiana, we cap that at $3,000, whereas in other states, it may be $6,000. So you want to be very, very careful that you know your state's laws, because you need to abide by that. And then also, whenever you're getting a consent or you're terminating parental rights, each state does have a little bit of difference there. And so in Indiana, we do have specific laws regarding birth parents' consent and the rights that they have, and then also what obligations they have if they would want to not sign that or try to revoke that. It's very difficult to revoke in Indiana, but there are some laws about that. And so those are state-specific, and I have found that Indiana is very strict, whereas if you go to another state like Virginia, they have a lot more flexibility, and so you're going to want to know your state's laws regarding adoption.
I'm guessing with flexibility comes the potential for scenarios that you didn't, you're both, assuming both parties are on the same page, so to speak, but when you have flexibility, it's a positive that the laws are rigid here in Indiana, correct?
I consider it a positive because you want to know that this is a permanent plan. And so not only for the birth family to know that this is a decision and it's permanent, it's not something you can change your mind about, and so actually knowing that, so they know what kind of decision they're making. I think that's important. I think that it's important for them to know what legal rights they're giving up and how permanent that really is. And then, of course, for the adoptive parents, knowing that it's very difficult for them to undo that once they make that decision. And of course, ultimately, we're always looking at the child, and so we want that permanency plan for the child, and we want that stability for them.
Now, I have friends who, I know this happens occasionally, where people are like, you know what, they're looking to buy or sell a house, and they forego the realtor, to save some money and cut out the middle person. That's right. This is not an area where you want to do an end around. This is something where you really need legal expertise, even if it is just domestic, because Indiana has rigid laws, let alone if it's another country and you're dealing with their laws.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're definitely asking a lawyer, and I think, of course, we need to...
I'm also asking
but
a mother who's adopted.
Yeah,
so, I mean, from a
I'm an
personal
adoptive
level.
mother, and I don't think that there's any possible way I could have completed adoption without an adoption service provider. And that can be an agency along with an attorney. And here in the state of Indiana, specifically, we do have laws that say that's who you need to use in order to do an adoption. And so you can't just go use a friend that adopted before or anything like that. And so you really need to use an attorney or an adoption service provider, which would be that licensed child placing agency, which we call adoption agency.
There you go, exactly.
And so you definitely need to use one of those individuals. It's not something you want to try to do on your own or a non-professional. You want to have somebody that's a professional, licensed, and insured.
If anyone's using the word dabble, don't use them.
That's right.
Right? We're going to put the link to on our website, IndyStyle.tv. It's a conversation that occasionally starts casually with a couple, but then it gets serious quite quickly. So you want some experts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
She was telling me about her family. Exhausting just hearing about it's nice to know that I don't. Anyway, my house is. She has twice as many kids as I do, and I bet her house is twice as clean. Toys,
Of course.
though? You got a toy list set for Christmas?
Oh, yeah.